if you talk to manufacturers, if you talk to cattle ranchers, if you talk to farmers, if you talk to steel workers, they're all in for the tariffs. They're in.
Selena, you went to a steel mill, and a steel mill owned by U.S. Steel that is at the crucible of everything that's going on now with President Trump's economic policies, with international global trade. This is the plant, the U.S. Steel plant. I'm going to set this up for our listeners and viewers that Nippon Steel announced in a stunning announcement while President Biden was still in office, that they had made this offer and had been accepted to buy U.S. Steel. And people flipped out. But you went there to do
Yeah.
you did what people don't do anymore. You did reporting. You went there and you talked to the management, you talked to workers, and what you found was a much more nuanced story than I think anybody would have expected. Were you yourself surprised?
Well, I mean, I cover these guys. I knew sentiments had shifted from when the announcement was first made. And I've been to the Irvin plant. To set this up, the Irvin plant sits on a hill or a mountain, I would call it a mountain, that overlooks the Monongahela River. It is just a tour de force. It is just this massive plant. It's 86 years old. The rolling mill inside is also 86 years old. And for 3 decades, I've been trying to get into that plant. And I finally broke them down and annoyed them enough that they let me come in. And honestly, it was one of the most unique experiences of my entire journalistic career, to be able to cover something that has been very, very much at the heart of Western Pennsylvania and the identity of the working class. And so, I go inside, hard hat. I mean, the sound is just this big hum. It sounds and smells and feels like work. That's the best way to describe it. And there's men and there's women there, and people think of like hard labor work. Yes, there's definitely part of that, but also part of that is a lot of technology, right, to make things precise, to keep them competitive. But the mill is 86 years old, and they can't, obviously they're not putting duct tape on it. It would melt off. It's 3,000 degrees, but they put, you can't keep this mill going much longer.
All right, so U.S. Steel doesn't think it has the money to modernize it, but Nippon Steel thinks it does and has promised to put $1 billion into the plant to retrofit it and make it a modern steel plant.
Yeah, they have actually upped that offer to $7 billion.
Wow. So, all right. So I guess it begs 2 questions. I mean, but first of all, let's set the scene, because you and I have been reporting long enough. Japan used to be the boogeyman. Japanese cars, Japanese semiconductors, Japanese steel. They were this great existential threat to the American way of life. This is when Jimmy Carter was president, Ronald Reagan was president, and into the Bush years. And people did things like protectionist Democrats would on Capitol Hill smash Toshiba's or computers. Remember this? But now, the world's changed. Russia is still what it's always been all my life, a geopolitical threat, and the war in Ukraine has brought that home. China is now the bogeyman. China is the emerging power, the real threat to America. At least that's how it's perceived. And so I guess Japan now is our friend. I guess, I mean, we fought with the Russians and the Chinese against Japan in World War II, but those days are long gone. Now what people think is that Japan is our ally, and if Japan wants to help make this plant a going concern, we all ought to be behind it.
Yeah, so the initial reaction from the union guys I sat down and talked to, but also management, was, and that in itself was very interesting to sit down with both. But the initial reaction was no. Japan was the bad guy, not only in dumping steel, but also, this is a multi-generational industry. So their dads and their granddads were fought in World War II. So there was just this completely different sentiment about Japan. However, after they started going over the deal, after U.S. Steel was blunt to say, yeah, you know what, we're not going to upgrade this. We'll go down to Arkansas or Alabama. This is over. The Mon Valley is over, which is where the Clairton, the Braddock, and the Irvin Works all sit within 9 miles of each other. And they started to see this in a very different way. And it took a few months of talking with Nippon, of talking with US Steel, for them to understand. Now, what's really interesting is that the international is all for it. Now, the international president lives in Cleveland, and he—
You're talking about the international union here. Yeah.
The international union.
Yeah.
The local union has broken away from it, from them on this. That's the other, sort of part of it.
What's the local union? What's the sentiment among the local? Are they warming to the idea though? Your story makes me sound
in.
Yeah.
All
okay.
in.
All right.
Completely all in.
Well, I was down in Alabama, and they've got in the Birmingham used to be well, it wasn't a rival to Pittsburgh, but it was a very important steel manufacturing sector in the United States for a long time. It's not anymore. Most of those plants lie idle. Whoever's going to, if ever talking about moving jobs to Alabama, is going to have to rebuild or even construct plants there. But it's the workforce. They think they can, I guess they think they can have a non-union workforce or a cheaper workforce in Alabama.
Yeah, they think they can.
Yeah.
There or Arkansas, I can't remember which state it was.
Yeah.
But they think they can have a non-union cheaper, and they don't have this. It will cost $1 billion alone to rebuild this rolling mill. They're not going to invest in it.
Yeah.
Now,
right.
you.
So back to what you were saying. So the local people, the people who work in that plant, unionized plant, Western Pennsylvania, working class. I mean, I would, politically, mostly probably what you and I would call Reagan Democrats to this day. Their first reaction is shock and horror. Then the second thing is, well, maybe they want to upgrade the plant. They want to keep my job. They want to keep steel an important part of the Western Pennsylvania economy. Maybe I'll think about it. And they thought about it, and now you say they're all in.
They're all in. They're absolutely all in. And so is the communities around them, the mayors, the state senators, the state reps, the state, well, not the U.S. House. I'm not quite sure what Summer Lee thinks. But they are definitely all in. And they believe, while both Biden and Trump were against it. And which, by the way, I talked to John Anzalone, who was Biden's pollster forever. And he tells me they were just flabbergasted that Biden wouldn't do this. And because everyone in the Biden administration was for it. And they just could not get him to move on this. Now, Trump is
maybe
more
Biden was just too old school. He's born during World War II. Maybe he just couldn't get his mind around it. You're listening to Salena Zito, excellent reporter from Western Pennsylvania, and she's in the Pittsburgh. You probably tell from her accent if you know American linguists. She's from Pittsburgh. She wrote an excellent piece in the Washington Post about visiting the steel mill, U.S. steel mill that Nippon Steel is saying they're taking over. And all right, so that brings me to now. So Donald Trump initially didn't sound supportive of it. Where is the Trump administration on this right now?
Right now, they are in furious discussions with Nippon, with Japan, with U.S. Steel, and with the local steel workers.
Doesn't this fit Trump? Trump's always telling people to come to America and invest. Isn't this just right in his wheelhouse?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would be shocked if this deal doesn't get done. He did that press conference with the Prime Minister of Japan in February. Pretty much put the guy on the spot and said, we're gonna make you guys invest. And the look on his face was like, well, I didn't see that coming. But look, Japan wants in our market desperately. Nippon desperately wants in our market. The tariffs are going to absolutely crumble them. He has the upper hand, meaning Trump. He has the upper hand in this. And it's very interesting to me to watch these two different worlds that I straddle. Because if you talk to manufacturers, if you talk to cattle ranchers, if you talk to farmers, if you talk to steel workers, If you talk to energy workers, they're all in for the tariffs. They're in completely, even if they take a hit on their 401k. Their attitude is, well, I took one in 2008 and 2020, and I'm doing okay. It'll come back. This levels the playing field. And the one guy said to me, the manager of the plant, he said, where was all the grief and people being upset when this industry just got shipped off to Mexico, shipped off to Canada, shipped off to Japan and China? There wasn't one. And
all right, we got 1 minute left. Look into your crystal ball and tell me, if this deal goes through, how does it affect the politics of Pennsylvania?
It shifts the electorate even more red. The working class has already moved to the right. We saw that in this election. It's white working class, Hispanic working class, Black working class. If it's not just divided by race. And
so you think if this, so we've come full circle, you and I,
yes,
in our reporting career. So if Japan if a Japanese company is allowed to take over U.S. Steel, that helps Republicans.
It does help over Republicans, although I still think it'll be a deal. I still think it'll be the U.S. Steel name, right? I still
it's
think
one of the most iconic names in American industry.
It's the first billion-dollar company in the world, the once the largest company in the world.